New Living Translation. When you have it, say amen.
Amen.
It reads as follows. It says, about that time, Hezekiah became deadly ill, and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, went to visit him. He gave the king this message. This is what the Lord says. Set your affairs in order, for you are going to die. You will not recover from this illness. When Hezekiah heard this, he turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you and have served you single-mindedly, always doing what pleased you. Then he broke down and wept bitterly. But before Isaiah had left the middle courtyard, this message came to him from the Lord. Go back to Hezekiah, the leader of my people. Tell him, this is what the Lord, the God of your ancestor David says. I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will heal you in 3 days. From now, you will get out of bed and go to the temple of the Lord. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will rescue you in this city from the king of Assyria. I will defend this city for my own honor and for the sake of my servant David. Then Isaiah said, make an ointment from figs. So Hezekiah's servants spread the ointment over the boil, and Hezekiah recovered. Meanwhile, Hezekiah had said to Isaiah, what sign will the Lord give to prove that he will heal me and that I will go to the temple of the Lord 3 days from now? Isaiah replied, this is the sign from the Lord to prove that he will do as he promised. Would you like the shadow on the sundial to go forward 10 steps or backwards 10 steps? The shadow always moves forward, Hezekiah replied. So that would be easy. Make it go 10 steps backwards instead. So Isaiah the prophet asked the Lord to do this, and he caused the shadows to move 10 steps backwards on the sundial of Azar. 911.
Preach, Bishop!
911. What do you do when you got a 911? Truly, we do bless the Lord. I don't know about you. I know in these 11 months, I done had some 911.
Come on now, Bishop.
I began to look and really love the history on Hezekiah, and many of you, if you like history, I would tell you to take some time, study Hezekiah. And many of us, as I began to read, and Brother Robert, would you put the 3rd verse back up there for me? When we began to read and look at the particular text, it was a lot of things going on. And I like this because Hezekiah Remember, O Lord, how I have always been faithful to you and have served you single-minded, always doing what pleased you. Hold that there, just hold that there. Many of us, and I love the intercessors that we have here at the Impact Church. I love all of the individuals that's praying. But you know, it's hard to be an intercessor if you had never had a 911. I began to look and began to really study the history of Hezekiah. And Hezekiah, if you study this history, you find out that in the time when all of the things was going on, that Judah was a remnant. God had to divide the kingdoms behind sin and what David did and so forth. And Judah was the only existing part. It was a remnant of God that was still lasting. I'm gonna put it in short term, Bufford Firm, take you through it right quick. You have to study the history yourself. But when you begin to look at the history, you find out that he was a son of Ahab. So Ahab was not what you call a godly man. But I found some things out about Hezekiah. Hezekiah, he had somehow gotten in a relationship with God. He understood some things about God. He had become a king that prayed. He had become a king that would listen to the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah had free reign in the kingdom. He could go to and fro like he wanted to. Ain't nothing wrong with having a prophet that can go to and fro like they need to go and bringing forth a word of truth. Isaiah was a great prophet. And I like this because God just shouldn't send anybody. This is what you call a major prophet. He was a prophet of God that brought forth the truth. Because anytime you walk up into the king's domain and you just begin to tell him that get your things in order, God said you're getting ready to die. I know you like to get a prophetic word and you want that word to be one that make you feel good, one that make you click, one that make you tick. But this was a word that was calling forth a 911. In other words, it's an emergency, because he wasn't talking about just anything happening. He was talking about taking him out. Now I began to look and I wanted to understand what was transpiring in the mind of Hezekiah at this particular time. I don't know. Many of you, when you get a 911 call, it will cause you to call. It'll cause you to call for an emergency. In other words, you don't do things as you normally do. But I found some things out. The reason that this Hezekiah could remind God of what he had done. You know, it's good that when you're a prayer warrior, you're able to have a life that lines up with what you're praying about. In other words, Hezekiah had a good credit report. In other words, he had some good credit with God. Let me talk to somebody. Ain't no need of you praying and your credit ain't good. I might as well just tell you, if your credit ain't good, the only prayer you need to pray is, Lord, have mercy on me. Y'all, because why? You don't have a relationship with him. Let me talk to some of us that's trying to get our credit up. You got to get your credit up there so you can get anything to move. It's the same thing with God. You got to have good credit with him. And the reason I like Hezekiah had good credit with God because he caused his people to reform. This was the last kingdom to go down. And this king of Assyria, he had taken over everything in the land. Every city had went down, and the only one was standing was Judah. They were the last one standing, the last remnant of God. And the reason I like Hezekiah, he had not only had faith, but he learned how to wait on faith. I know we talk about Job waited on the Lord, but I looked at Hezekiah, and if you look at real history, they go to dealing up, and they talked about that he had fortified the city of Judah. They had great walls around the city. And Hezekiah was concerned because he knew if a massive army came upon him, that they weren't going to be able to defeat him because they would be outnumbered. So Hezekiah had fortified the city. He had caused it to get into a place where couldn't nobody get in. It was great walls. And a good king or a good warrior, they would have to consider about coming up against them because they could fight off that wall and kill up a whole lot of soldiers. But I like what Hezekiah does. He understood that we need to get a lifeline. We got to have a stream coming in. Hezekiah literally dug tunnels that they could reach out to get the water to come into the inner city. So when a siege would come, that they would be able to lock up in the city. They didn't have to come out. They had all the water that they needed to be able to survive. Let me talk to folk that we like to talk about having a lock in, and we like to talk about being sieged up so we can get the warfare. Well, this was literally going on in Hezekiah's time. He literally had his city fortified. He had the water coming in from underground. And if you study it, it said they dug tunnels, and the tunnel was over a quarter-mile long, that they could drain the water to cause the lake to come into the inner city. So when the siege took place, and this king of Assyria, he came up against him, he looked at the wall, and he said that I'm just going to starve them out. Let me talk to some saints that the devil tried to starve you out this morning. They got you in a siege. You just locked up and you can't move. But if you got the Holy Spirit, you got some water that you can drink on. You got some things that you can deal with. And look, this is what Hezekiah did. He listened to what the prophet would tell him, and he prepared himself for the hard times were coming. Now, he believed God to be a delivering God, but he obeyed. You know, many of us as saints, we are prayer warriors, but we don't always obey what God tells us to do. We don't always fortify ourselves like we need to be. Many of us, the devil got us in siege right now. He's just saying, can't come over the wall, but I'm going to wait till you come out. Let me talk to somebody in here.
That's right, Bishop.
Yeah. You're thinking about it now all week long. He got you just locked in. How he lock you in? He lock you in your mind. You know, it's a warfare in your mind. You find out that some things, your mind, if the enemy got you seized and you starving like you starving, some things that you can't even bring your members in you to do. It's some things that you really wrestling and dealing with. Oh yeah, mental illness, it is real. It's a lot of things that the enemy uses. That's how come he said the weapons of our warfare are mighty, and they're not common for the pulling down the strongholds. Tells us to bring all of our thoughts into subjection. Sometimes you got to learn when the enemy sieges you, you got to bring all your thoughts into subjection. In other words, look at your neighbor and say, you got to think about what you're thinking about. Let me talk to somebody. Because guess what? Even you're thinking wrong because you're thinking wrong. Let me talk to somebody, because if you stay locked up and sieged long enough, you'll come out, you'll mess up, you'll make the wrong mistake, you'll say the wrong thing. And I admire Hezekiah because as king, he got everybody locked in. The gates wouldn't open, with nobody coming out, with nobody coming in. I'll be glad when God be able to get his people to trust him enough to say ain't nobody coming out and ain't nobody coming in. It's easy because our thought life, it's sieged up. And Hezekiah was all wrapped up in the, but you know, the verse that we're looking at, the reminder, I said this Hezekiah had to have a relationship with God. His faith had to be great. So flip back over to the 19th chapter. It tells you what had transpired. He wasn't a rookie. He had had some 911s before. He had been through some things in his life. In other words, he knew how to call on God. He knew that when things got bad, that he needed to have the faith to be obedient to do what God would have him to do. It's something when you can pray and tell God, remember the things that I did, that I was always one-minded, that I always obeyed you, that I always done what you told me to do. I know ain't many of us going to shout on this. You speak in tongues on it later, but if you're going to be a real prayer warrior, you need to be able to tell God, let me bring some things so you remember. Even though things got tough, I never turned my back on you. You never heard me gospel. You never heard me saying a thing out of my mouth. Only thing came out of my mouth was going to be good things, things that would encourage, things that would bring some life. Hezekiah looking up at God, turned his face to the wall, and he began to pray. Look at somebody and say, he in the midst of his own 911. It's one thing for your country to be in a 911, but it's another thing when the prophet comes to you and tell you, get your things in order because God getting ready to take you out. He knew God, and when God brought a word, he was a keeper of this word. But I like what God does. Anybody in here had a 911, and guess what? You got God to change his mind. You got God to have a second thought about what he was getting ready to do. Not like what he done down, and he got mad down and told Jonah to go down and preach to him. And he said, I knew you was going to change your mind. Well, Hezekiah said, look, God's the keeper of his word. And if he told me to get my things in order, I thought about that because most of us, when you get out of here, you never know you're gone. But he sent the prophet to him, and the prophet says to him, get your things in order. In other words, he said, Hezekiah, think about what you're thinking. Think about what you're getting ready to do. Hezekiah said, I don't know but one way to do it. I've been trusting God this long. God's been a deliverer for a long time. He said, I'm going to turn my face to the wall. and I'm going to have a conversation with him. Listen at this.
Come on, Bishop.
19. This wasn't the first prayer that he prayed. He wasn't no rookie. Yeah, this was a king that had a relationship with him. He had dealt. Judah didn't stay free as long as they were free. Nobody came against them. They didn't have a massive army, but they had a God on their side. Sometimes you got to understand numbers don't matter. When God got a remnant that will obey him, God gonna protect what belongs to him. Y'all ain't talking to me today. Yeah, they may have you on siege, on jobs, in houses, or wherever you at. But one thing you got to understand, if God be for you, who can be against you? Hezekiah understood it was in him that he moved. It was in him that they only had power. So guess what? He kept himself before God. Watch this. If you just flip back up to 1935, you hear Hezekiah praying. You know he a praying king. He prayed about every circumstance, everything that was going to go down. 19th chapter, it began to talk about that the king of Assyria, he had got wore out. He had got frustrated.
Right.
History of it says that
That's right.
in the homeland, they was under attack. And they had a massive army of 185,000 plus. And the king said, wait a minute, we're going to have to pull them out that rat hole. We're going to have to do something to draw them out. He sits down. He began to write threatening letters. He began to tell him what he's going to do if they don't open up them gates. Let me talk to somebody. That's what he's telling you in your head. Yeah, you don't give in if you don't surrender. This is what I'm going to do. He writes pages. He fights them out. King, being used to a king that when he got a 911, he was heading up to where he could get his 911 taken care of. He knew, get on his face. And not only this, he brought evidence. He stretched out all the paperwork that the king had sent from Assyria, because he is one thing, he was talking bad about God. He began to brag on himself. I done took down everybody. Every country done failed. Their gods couldn't hold them. I burnt their gods. You know how the devil do.
Right.
Yeah. He told somebody last night, your God ain't able. He told somebody the other week that you're not going to be able to stand. He told you the other week, God done left you and he done forsake you. You need to just come on out and throw things in. Let me talk to somebody. You ain't crazy. You're going to be all right this morning. Just keep looking forward. Listen, God got a word for you today. You know, matter of fact, we went back an hour or two. This is your signal. Let me talk to somebody. I got to get you to understand the sun going back this morning. This daylight saving time. Look at your neighbor and say, this is my day to break through. Come on, y'all ain't gonna talk to me. I wish I had some real folk that when God want to do something, they'll let him do it. Yeah, this is the perfect day. I asked him, he said, this word line up with just what I want to do. Somebody needs to know that I'm getting ready to break through in their life. I'm getting ready to call some things that's been holding you down, got you on lockdown, got you on shut up, got you when you can't move. I'm getting ready to do some things in your life. I wish I had somebody to be bold enough and say, that boy talking to me this morning, I'm going to get what I got coming to me. Look at your neighbor and say, I ain't going to be denied today. Oh, I wish I had some real folks. Because if you ever been in siege, if things been on lockdown long enough, you got to say to yourself, I'm going to get my solution today. I'm getting ready to get the answer to my problem. I'm going to receive what God has for me today. Look at your neighbor and say, if you got the faith, God got the power. Let me talk to somebody up in this house today. Listen. I see him. He spreads it all over the altar. And it let me know that the king, when he got 911s and called, that he knew how to go to God himself. He didn't call the prophet then. He went and spread it out. He began to say, look, God, look what this king done wrote. He said that you're not the God. You're not Jehovah. You're not Jehovah Nissi. You're not God. He said he's going to have more power than you got. Oh, ain't it something when you begin to think that you hide in God? This king done set himself up for a mess up. This king done set some things in the place. place now. So in the midst of what was transpiring, all of that took place, and he told him when the king came in, and the prophet came, the prophet told the king, God getting ready to handle this situation. I wish somebody would understand. It was a good prophetic word before he got the bad one. He said, listen, the king of Assyria, he getting ready to get messed up. God getting ready to jack him from head to toe. That next morning it says, when they looked out, 185,000 soldiers that was all corpse. I believe he just looked over. He didn't even say Gabriel did it. He didn't say what angel he called. He might have just said, you go handle this. By the time the angel done flapped his wing, 185,000 Assyrians done fell dead. Ain't it something? You got a 911 that God handled so strong that after you done prayed, that God showed up, took out 185,000. The king of Assyria said, wait a minute, I better be getting, I got to move up out of here. Because the God that they serve is able. Look at your neighbor and say, God getting ready to give you a testimony. He getting ready to let you know that what folks say ain't possible, God getting ready to show himself mighty. God getting ready to show himself strong. Yeah. You can shout on it. I wish somebody would tag it. Every now and then, you better learn how to claim something. Look at your neighbor and say, this one's for me. I know we all in need, but I'm claiming this for myself. I wish I had me a touch up in here this morning. Somebody to say that didn't breathe on you. If you've been in it long enough, you ready to come out. Hey! Don't be scared. Open up your mouth. I wish somebody learned how to claim something. Say, Lord, that's for me this morning. I don't care if you know I've been hurt. I don't care. This ain't my breakthrough day. Listen. Can you imagine?
Lord have mercy.
Being in siege, 185,000,
Good God.
and you didn't even have to shoot a bow and arrow.
Woo! My God.
Open up the gates. 185,000 men
Good Lord.
laying on the ground, dead as a doorknob.
Yes.
Look at your neighbor and say, "Don't mess with God's people long enough."
That's right. That's right.
Now look at him and say, "Don't be scared." You know, sometimes folk, when God moves, you be so scared you wouldn't even went out the gates then. Sometimes you can be locked up for so long that when God calls a breakthrough, you act like you can't move. I wish I had somebody up in this house that say, if that door ever opens, I'm coming through it. You ain't got to worry about it. If a crack come in, I'm going out. Look at this, I'm coming out of this. I'm coming out of this. If God can destroy my enemy, I'm coming out of this. Come on, y'all better get with me today. I got some folks, you've been in it so long, you done messed around and got comfortable. You've been in it all your life. But I'll stop by to tell you that when a 911 get in God's lap, he go out of hand. Look at your neighbor down, coming out.
Yes.
I don't believe y'all want no breakthrough. Let me look on this side. I want to talk to some folks that ready to come out. You sit there if you want to, but if the door open, I'm coming out.
Bring Bishop.
I heard you, Janine. I'm coming out. When God send help, I'm coming out. When he cast my enemy, I'm coming out. I ain't got to think twice. Somebody say, I ain't even got to think about this thing. It ain't even debatable. I'm coming out. And I'm coming out right now. Y'all scared. I become a scared up in here. You got to come out right now. When your time hits, you got to say, excuse me, I'm coming out. I got my breakthrough. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I got to help somebody to understand what's going on in church. You know what? I don't have a time for you to break through. Look at your neighbor and say, when the breakthrough comes, I'm breaking out. I'm breaking out. I'm breaking out. Look, excuse me. This But I ain't missing this one. I ain't missing this one. I'm not missing this one. This is my day. Listen, this breakthrough Sunday, it ain't like a regular Sunday. This was something that you don't get every now and then. He said, but when the thing is this, you better come on and come through. I want you to have your memory and pull them out with you. You ought to take them by the hand and say, look, I don't want you to miss it, and I'm sure not going to miss it. I believe I'm talking to some folk now that know how to turn their face to the wall. In other words, when you turn your face to the wall, you turn everybody else out. This ain't got nothing to do with you. It ain't got nothing to do with you. Somebody said, I'm finna turn my face to the wall. You know what? Sometimes you get scared because other folks looking at you. But I'm gonna turn my face to the wall. I'm gonna turn my face to the wall. God, I'm gonna turn my face to the wall. Look at your neighbor, turn your face to the wall. Not the people, turn your face to the wall. Yeah. Hezekiah got the news. I need a reprieve. I ain't ready to die. And the reason he ain't ready to die, Hezekiah only ruled 29 years, so he was only into his 14th year of his reign. In other words, he was still in his prime. He still had some more work to do. Y'all ain't talking to me. Let me talk to some folk you give up too easy. Some folk dying too early. Some folks ain't fulfilling their purpose and their destiny. I come to talk to you. You don't quit ahead of time. Hezekiah said, listen, I've had faith all of this time. I had faith that you were going to get rid of the Assyrians. I had faith you was going to keep my people. I had faith. And he said, guess what? I got faith for me today. He said, I turned my face to the wall. And guess what? I like what he did. He said before Isaiah could get to the middle of it. Look at your neighbor. Somebody say you might be in the middle of it. Before he got to the middle of the courtyard. Otherwise, he didn't get out the gate good. You know you're praying when the message comes and the messenger don't get out the gate. He didn't get out the gate. God said, wait a minute. He said, if this man Hezekiah got enough faith that I can take out 185,000 Assyrians, he's bold enough to tell me that I've been serving you wholeheartedly. Let me talk to you now. Somebody say you got to line this thing up right. Hezekiah had his life lined up so he could get an answer, so he could get a prayer through. Preach anyway, Bishop. Listen, you can pray and ain't gonna hit nothing but the wall if you ain't got your situation lined up. You got to get your life in order. Oh, let me talk to my intercessors up in here today. You wonder why all hell breaking loose in your life? You wonder why the enemy trying to siege you and lock you down? I stopped by to tell you today. He don't want you to be able to say, God, I stopped by to remind you that I got my stuff in order. I got a I got a 911 and I need you to get it through. Somebody said, look, I need it right now. Hezekiah said, he said, get your house in order. It takes time to get a will. It takes time to lay hands on all your sons and daughters. It takes time to see your grandchildren before you leave. Hezekiah said, I ain't dealing with none of that. I'm going to pray right now. He said, I'm going to turn my face to the wall right now. Look at your neighbor and say, right now. You know what? I found something out, Pastor. Saints want to wait for a pretty little moment to do what they need to do for God. But when it's uncomfortable, it's the right time. It ain't a cute little, yeah. You wondering about who gonna talk about me. I couldn't give a hill of beans. When I get my breakthrough today, you can talk about me and my mama. All I know. All I know. I was bound, but now I'm free. Scripture says this. But I know Hezekiah said, Lord, I've been fasting. I've been praying for Judah. I've kept the faith. I've done all that you told me to do. Boy, it feels good to be able to say you've done all that God told you to do. Y'all ain't gonna talk with me now. Listen. You got to be able to say, I got my stuff in order. I don't stop making slippers. Ain't no room now for no backing up. I don't stop thinking about quitting. Hezekiah said, look, I can't quit now. I'm in too deep. It's something. You talked about Paul had a thorn in his flesh. This man got a death sentence put on him today. But he said, listen, I got enough faith. If God can bring a death sentence, he can call somebody and they take it off of me. I know Isaiah come back and said, listen, God said. Somebody said, God said. You know, when God brings good news, I hear the thing that God said. When it's good news, God said. But when it's bad news, I don't hear you say, God said. When God say, come out of your sin. When God say, stop the fornication. God say, come out your wicked way. When God say, stop the lying in the backbite. When God say, oh yeah. Well, I didn't come to bring that guilty thing on you today, but guess what? I want you to be able to say, God said. When God said, you want God to say some good news. Good news came. He said, listen, Hezekiah. He said, I didn't get even halfway out of here. And God said, now watch this. You know, godly leadership means something. Mm-hmm. Godly leadership means something. I'm talking about from this pulpit down to your TV room. Godly leadership means something. James 5:15 says the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man In other words, when a 911 come on your household, when a righteous man
Come on now, Bishop.
and a righteous woman in there. You know, 911, they get, I was looking it up, they get 400 to 500 calls per person in that office, and they talk thousands of calls a day. That first offender, they got to get to it. But ain't it something, God hearing all them prayers?
Wow.
Hezekiah didn't have no red phone. I'm gonna face the wall. God, ain't it something? If God killed 185,000, you know how many people was in murder? How many folks was praying on the same line? But Hezekiah said, I got a 911. Turned his face to the wall. Reminded God of what he did. I'm going to show you what did it. And he began to weep. You know, used to be a time when folk come to the altar, they come remorseful. They come weeping. Folk ain't remorseful no more. Hezekiah was remorseful. I know Hezekiah was saying, Lord, if I've done anything, forgive me. Whatever it is, what did I do? What did I cause this to happen to me? That's what Paul said. What caused it? What am I doing? God gonna get the glory. That's why I'm talking about Hezekiah today. God's still getting the glory. I'm talking about the king over Judah. He said, what did I do? You know, I like God do. Let me show you what God do. God, when he sent the prophet back, he sent the remedy for the sickness. Because he said there was a sickness unto death. Now, all sickness ain't unto death. But he said his sickness was unto death. Boy, there's a strong prophet up in here. Prophet came with a word and a healing. I'm going to help some of you out. Y'all got a lot of folks. If they prophesizing to you, you better ask them where to heal it. Oh, excuse me.
Bishop.
Preach anyway, Bishop. I got a lot of prophets in the earth. They always got to tell you some news, but they don't tell you how to get healed. Well, let me pause this bus. I'm going to stop for a minute. I got to give you a moment to think about it. I told you it's power with godly leadership. Because see, godly leaders, a godly prophet, going to tell you how to get healed. He says, Hezekiah, tell your servants, go get me some of them figs. Yeah. Because see, for every sickness, God said, I'm going to bring the cure. No more on you than you can bear. No more on you than you can bear. You preach good this morning. No more on you than you can bear. Hezekiah, let him put the figs on him. I like Hezekiah. Hezekiah was he's scholarly. I mean, a little bit like a little bit. Because Hezekiah said, he said, all right, that's good, but what you going to do to prove to me? He told God, he said, God, I need proof now. What you gonna do that I can get up in 3 days and get back to church? Oh, did I say church?
That's right. That's right.
Well, folk don't understand the power of church. Hezekiah's desire was just to get back to church. I will make you lie, but I ain't gonna do it. I'll tell your neighbor I ain't missing another Sunday. Listen. I ain't gonna do it. My God, I'm not God. All right, Lord. All right. He said he won't tempt you. Listen. Hezekiah asked Isaiah. He said, I'm going to ask God. He said, go back and ask him. What do you want me to do? Go ahead 10 degrees or go back 10 degrees? I like this. I'm on daylight saving time. And guess what? Y'all got a whole hour. I ain't going to preach that whole hour. Listen. He says, go back because it's easy for the sun to go forward. And it went back. You know, I admire Hezekiah that God had a relationship so strong with him that God would bring proof. You can look up the sundial for yourself. Sundial, he could see where the shadow went back. And he knew in 3 days he was going to be back up in the temple. You know, saints of God, the king understood the power of being committed. He understood the power of keeping himself before the Lord. And it was so good. I like what God does. God said, listen, I'm going to bless you so good. He said, I'm going to give you 15 more years. Ain't it something when God tell you how much time he's going to give you? In other words, he said, look, you got 15 years. He said, hop to it. Do what you're going to do. And do it. But he says this. He says, I'm going to give you a reason for it. And the reason was for David's sake. God's a promise keeper. And he had promised David that it was always going to be one of his seeds on the throne. Now, after Ahab, what's his name? We just talked about him. Come on, Deep, you talked to Leslie. School time. You know, Manasseh. One who saw, he saw the prophet in hand. Still family, but he brought God to another side. But for 15 years, Judah had no adversaries that was able to stand against them. Egypt didn't come. Assyria didn't come back. They didn't have to deal with Babylon. They didn't deal with none of them. Because God made him a promise after he healed him, gave him 15 more years, and said, listen, I'm going to be with you like I was with David. I stopped by to tell you, listen to me this morning. God wants to have a relationship with you. That when a 911 hits your situation, that all you have to do is turn your face to the wall. Getting ready to go. I begin to think about Hezekiah. Okay. Word says God does not act deceitfully, but he can change his plans as a result of our response to his word. You want to change God's mind? You want to get a 911 number? I wrote this down. I'll never pull out a note. But he told me don't forget this one. As a result of our response to his word, thus what happens in our lives or in the life of the church is determined by both God's plan and our prayers. Our prayers. I ain't hard on my intercessors, but guess what? Trying to get a plan through. You know, I asked God, I had contracts written up. Because in the contract, I need to know if we're going to get it through, it's got to come through the word and prayer. I know y'all getting quiet because I'm teaching now. Tell your lady, absorb this. Listen, I don't need a devotion. I need some prayer. I need folk committed. I don't need folk just to be standing on the wall. I need folk. Hezekiah couldn't get to his closet. He said, a wall will do. I'm hurting too bad to get in the closet. The wall will do. I need some folk that'll turn their face to the wall. Somebody, I need some change up in here. We can get some change The plan's a good plan, but I need some praying folk. And you know, I'm going to help you out. With Hezekiah, not only was he praying while he was waiting, he was working. Get a shovel. He said, because if we stay in this siege a long time, we need water. He said, we need something to survive until the breakthrough comes. Yeah, read. Think of history. And you can look up on the History Channel, because it's real stuff. They still digging around there. And they still observing how they went underground, dug a tunnel, a reservoir, and drained the whole lake, and brought the lake into the middle of the camp, where everybody on the inside had water, but the civilians, they didn't have no water. They was supposed to be starving them out, and they were starving themselves out for messing with God's people. I'll show you what prayer do. You know the story. If you dig one bit, you better dig two. It was amazing. I love history. It's amazing that while he was waiting and praying, he was digging. It said it took about 6 months for them to dig that tunnel. But when the king of Syria showed up, with no water for them, because all the water was in where they were supposed to be on lockdown. In the church, we in the middle of the church where the water is. Devil think he got your seeds in the 4 walls. But I told you today, breakthrough coming. He told the children of Israel, this enemy that you see today, you'll see no more. He's been taking our enemies out for a long time. I wish somebody look at your neighbor and say, you better come on outside. You ain't seeing what God's doing. Listen, I'm finished. But Impact Church, I want to encourage you today. You're not in siege. God already done caused the breakthrough. And guess what? I'm looking all around this neighborhood. There's people coming up like the 5,000 strong all around this area. Judah was a remnant that God saved for his glory. Impact, you a remnant in this community for God's glory. And he needs you to come outside the gate. He done handled your enemy. Ain't nobody saying we having church on the hill. We creep in and we creep out. But you can tell because the best advertisement is a sanctified, Holy Ghost filled saved individual like Hezekiah that don't mind letting their light shine. Oh, y'all not. I'm teaching good today. I'm going to tell you like they told me. I'm teaching better than you're living. Listen. It's time out. It's time for us to turn our face to the wall. And you ought to tell the devil, I'll be doggone if I take my prayer, my song, my prayer, my faith. Ain't nothing that God gave me going back to the graveyard. When I get finished, I'm going to wear purpose out. Y'all, yeah, I'm going to wear purpose out. Come on, stand to your feet. Maybe somebody in the house today. Well, I felt like preaching today. Thank you. That's my breakthrough. I need a breakthrough. I need a breakthrough. Breakthrough. Impact break. It's a great word. It's a great word. But if you don't say nothing, it's just exists. Maybe somebody in the house. If you're not saved today, I want to invite you for salvation. For salvation. That's the first breakthrough in your life. You've been sieged long enough.